power. It's more efficient than running a big motor and running a car off gas in many ways. But it isn't necessarily, running a motor off electricity isn't necessarily that efficient. I mean, motors are big, heavy things meant to move around big chunks of metal. And the problem there is not so much shifting electricity, it's reducing the size and weight of the chunks of metal. That's what makes your Prius or your hybrids more efficient, more than the electrical capacity. Although hybrids are very sensible also. I mean, they're better. They are better. Don't get me wrong. They're better. They're more efficient. But they're not the answer to big transportation. Who uses electricity? Well, again, it's growth in electric consumption in homes. We, individuals in final consumption, have used more and more electricity. You can see it rising very fast here. Now, interesting, electricity, unlike overall energy, you see that personal consumption, household consumption, has actually run ahead of industrial and commercial. So that's interesting. Electricity is different that way. It is much more, goes to the personal final use. How is it generated? In a number of ways. Fossil fuels are huge. You can also use hydro and nuke are very big. And then, as usual, the wind and thermal and so on bring up the rear. And this varies from place to place, what this mix is. Norway has an enormous amount of hydropower, so it uses it. California, by the way, has quite a lot of hydropower. We have a very high percentage by world standards. But China has been trying to increase this, and it's a lot bigger now. This is an old chart. France has a huge nuclear. It's even bigger than that now, I think. And yet, even so, nuclear is still less than 50% there. And so you can see that all different countries, different regions sort of use different mixes depending on what they've got. Our fossil fuel plants are heavily concentrated in the east because they use coal. These are all coal-fired plants through here. Whereas hydropower, heavily concentrated in the west because we got mountains. Pretty simple, but very geographic. Nukes, kind of all over the place. But the U.S. doesn't actually have that many compared to Japan or France. Okay, here we go. Yeah, I really blew this. I never move these things around. I'm sorry. I want to talk about grids next. Once you generate electricity, you have to put it into a grid. And that's absolutely central. Like the pipelines, oil and gas, but even more so. Because all electricity has to be transmitted over wires. It is not ever transmitted by a ship load or a train load or something. It has to go over wires. So the wires are absolutely critical. This is a nice kind of indicative map of U.S. electric grid. This is the Pacific Coast grid with the generating stations and all the link-ups that link us to Washington State and even all the way into coal fields out at Four Corners and so on. You can see how the grids are divvied up in the U.S. By region. So this infrastructure is highly regionalized. They do connect, but they're very intensely woven within those regions. Why do we have the grids? Well, again, the nature of supply and also covering distance. You lose electricity over distance. The more you can link up all your sources and bring in sources from as close as possible, the more efficient it's going to be. The more you can link up generation where one station goes down, the other goes up. Say you've got hydro. Hydro is inconsistent, so you'd like to have hydro linked along with, say, a nice, stable fossil fuel plant just humming along well. Rachel? Texas is itself? Yeah, well, there's the Republic of Texas, Yeah, I don't know the history of that, but everybody does. I don't know. It is quirky why that would be, especially for electricity. I mean, you can see it with gas and so on. Well, why electricity? I don't know. So the grid is great for spreading out demand, spreading supply, equalizing it, peaking it, and so on. If some wires go down, you can move electricity around the down power lines. So the grid system, and it's hugely complex, by the way. It's all run by computers now. It's a much, much smarter grid than it used to be, and it's quite kind of a marvel of modern technology. Yeah. We only have 2 nukes left. No, very, very little. No, we have 3. Let's say we have Diablo Canyon and San Onofre. But they closed the Sacramento one. Yeah, so it's just 2. Yeah, California's been pretty anti-nuke. And nuke has been diminishing in the U.S. I don't go into it because although, it's a catastrophe in a lot of ways, and a catastrophe waiting to happen, as we saw at Fukushima, its future is very bleak. And partly because of Fukushima, but also other problems. It just doesn't work as promised. It creates this unbelievable question of getting rid of the used fuel rods. That's what happened at Fukushima. They had nowhere to put them. So they were sitting at the power plants. And some of the disaster, some of the radiation contamination, a lot of it was due to those rods sitting there that went dry and then blew up and spewed this stuff into the air. Yeah. I'm going to come back to that just at the end. And then grids can be national, or they can be nationalized, as in France and China, or they can be regulated. France is talking neoliberal now under Sarkozy. They're talking about privatizing their grid. They haven't done it yet, and it would be pretty stupid to do it, but anyway, because it works really well. Why are these systems heavily regulated, heavily controlled? Well, because the grid is so central to everybody. It is a kind of natural monopoly if you hold the whole grid. And it's very, very profitable. It's a lot of investment, and if you can't charge a lot, because, after all, electricity passes over the grid for nothing, So it's hard to come up with a pricing scheme that's a sort of natural market pricing scheme that's going to make you profits. So usually you have regulated prices and regulated profits. That's historically how it's mostly been done. But to come to the end of this electricity bit, I just want to talk about the attempt to deregulate electricity, which was very popular in the 80s and 90s. A number of states did it. Texas was one. Texas did it part way. California, in its usual neoliberal way, not just disinvestment in universities, but decided in the 90s, let's go deregulate our electricity system. And the idea is you split it up. You have one grid, but somebody operates the grid, and other people do the generation. You have many generators. Why have the same company generate electricity and sell it the way it always was historically under PG&E? And you also have many users. So why not have the generators sell it through third-party brokers, wholesalers, who then sell it to every different kind of user under different kind of plans, kind of like a cell phone plan. Except that the cell phone system in the U.S. don't use the same grid. I think in France, I'm not sure, I think in France they do. So the advantages are, of course, flexibility. Maybe you could get cheaper prices. You could get more innovation, kind of all kinds of great ways they could think of getting electricity to you, getting it specific users, getting specific needs met, and so on. And maybe it would all really do well. I think the most important part was some people saw a way to make a profit off this, and so they were leading the chart. But even PG&E was a big promoter of its own deregulation in California. It said, this is so boring. We want to do something else. We're not making a lot of money. We're regulated. It's just snoozy time. Of course, had they been taking better care of their records and their gas pipes, they might have had something to do. But they didn't feel that was too important. And they weren't making much money, and everybody else was making a lot more money. So PG&E said, deregulate us. And remember, PG&E, the largest utility in the world at that time. Okay, failures, or at least in the United States. But the deregulation fails because grids are so low profit that nobody invests in them. And if you're the grid owner, you don't really care. And PG&E ended up as only owning the grid, which turned out to be a loser. And so you don't invest, and then your grid starts to deteriorate. And then generation. Well, there were private guys got into investing in private generation, but they pretty quickly discovered that's kind of low profit too if prices are low. If demand isn't high, there's too much supply. Why build another power plant? It takes a long time. You get that kind of short-term investment horizon. You don't end up with enough power supply. And then brokers get in there, and they can start speculating. They game the system. And then nobody's in charge. You get poor coordination of the whole thing. And lo and behold, California went along with this. Great idea. Deregulated in, I think it was 95, maybe 96. And what happened is our grid continued to deteriorate. It had this one absolutely horrible choke point in the Central Valley between Southern and Northern California with one wire. And that was it. No way around it to move more electricity in a peak period north or south. We dropped all our long-term contracts. PG&E, somebody was generating, somebody was buying, everybody was out in the market, but nobody was stabilizing this. And again, nobody was watching. Overall, and meanwhile, Enron, this is the golden day of Enron, who were providing wholesale power. They were playing all these markets as they said they had all this oil and gas and electricity, but they didn't. It was all just a shell game. They were financial speculators, and as you know, it blew up. What happened is California had, in a moment, actually not a very high demand in 2001, suddenly their prices started going up. And it was very, very weird. It was early 2001. In the middle of actually an economic crisis here that hit California pretty hard. Suddenly, all the generators were down for maintenance at the same time. And everybody's going, well, why are so many down? Isn't anybody coordinating this? Oh, no, boy, we got a problem here. And then Enron and other suppliers like Reliant Energy started withholding gas going to the generators that are still working. We had the choke point in Central California, so we couldn't get, it was mostly in Northern California was hit the worst, couldn't get more electricity up north. And then everybody panicked, including the state. The state went out and spent something like $12 billion in short-term contracts to keep the electricity going so that Silicon Valley wouldn't brown out, and so on and so on. And it turned out billions of dollars, I think the final reckoning was $6 to $9 billion, went out of California, mostly state money, but also personal money, to Texas. And then Rick Perry says, see, Texas did better than you guys. No. Well, we gave you all our money.
Why?
Oh, because Enron and the companies signed these contracts, and we're paying the contracts off, because these contracts are still going.
With Texas firms?
Yeah, with Texas firms, because where does gas come from? El Paso Gas and so on. Reliant, we're selling gas and oil to our power plants. They were also selling electricity, I imagine, off the grid. That may have been part of it. Look at the prices. There's a real natural curve. So there you go. There's another one of those really great moments in the market, in market making. And it turned out, of course, once they indicted all these guys, if you've ever seen that wonderful movie, The Smartest Guys in the Room, about Enron, it's a fantastic insight into how a bunch of shysters can just screw everybody, delude themselves, and then bring everybody down, including California. And they were backed by Bush. Bush and Cheney and company refused to have the feds intervene to help California. They said, you're on your own. I wonder why. Look who voted against Bush. Not too many states, right? California, biggest state to vote against Bush. Oops, they didn't like that at all. And then Gray Davis, who was kind of not that popular guy anyway, had nothing, was in no way his doing, this whole thing, was thrown out of office by recall, and overwhelmingly because of the energy crisis, because of deregulation passed, by the way, under Pete Wilson, a Republican. And what did the wise people of California do? They voted in Arnold Schwarzenegger, who, of course, immediately solved the problem. Not. Did we do anything about our deregulation? No. We're still doing the same stupid thing. Oh, we haven't had a crisis since. So, well, yeah, we have had a crisis that collapsed demand. So, obviously, there's plenty of electricity right now. They also, by the way, did build another wire in the Central Valley. So, we did solve that. By the way, the only companies that came out smelling like a rose were these cities that had public utilities. LA Water and Power, Palo Alto. Any city that had a public utility system came out doing great. In fact, LA Power was selling power to desperate companies and made a bundle for the city of LA. By the way, in this era of deregulation, there were two other major blackouts in the early 2000s, which nobody remembers anymore, so I don't even know why I keep the slide. The whole Northeast went down with what was called a third world electric grid. Nobody minding the store. It just went clinkety, 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 kind of like cow mail. Just to bring it home. No investment. And they've known the thing's on its last legs. They're waiting to invest. Budget cuts, get cow mail. And I'll tell you what, I'll just talk about the greener pastures on Thursday. Okay, see you then.